Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to make a quick video covering 5 anatomy mistakes that you can fix today to make your art much better, like immediately. I guarantee that by the end of this video, your grasp on drawing anatomy will be better. Without further ado, let's get into the video. All of these mistakes I made in this drawing and I'm going to break them down and show you how you can fix them. So, the first mistake is that there isn't much space for her brain. The first thing that you should do anytime you sketch a person is making sure that you leave enough space for their brain. It also helps you make the head look more 3D and more believable. But if I was drawing this again, I would sketch out her skull like this. I also made her face a little bit too long. This is something a lot of beginners do because you struggle fitting in all of the facial features onto the correct proportions. So now I would also go a little bit like this and make it a bit less long. And then our hair would go like this. You would leave a little bit of space for the hair, but not too much, and it will go kind of consistently around the skull rather than having really big lumps like I do here. A lot of artists draw this kind of 3/4 perspective, and they often draw this eye as if it's facing forwards. So you can see I've done this here. However, if I look to the side like this, it looks almost like my eye is looking sideways rather than forwards. So you need to make sure that you show this, and you need to in order to do that, you need to bring this eyelid down slightly, because that's kind of what your eye looks like to the side, when it's to the side. So you do a more defined shape like this. Same goes for this eye. In this drawing, I didn't make it clear that she's facing sideways or to 3/4. Her eye would actually be probably more like this, because if I look this way, even if I'm looking forwards, you can see my nose covers this part of my eye white, so it looks like my iris is all the way in the corner of my eye. So you need to draw this. But this other eye, less artists get wrong. But this one, most people draw it looking forwards, which immediately makes your drawing look a lot more flat. The next anatomy mistake I see basically every beginner artist make is this. And it's drawing a female chest like one single curve. In reality, even baggy clothes don't look like this. And this also goes into a point I'm going to mention later about drawing curved lines for everything. So if I were to sketch out her ribcage, spine would be here. Her chest would likely go maybe here. And because of this, I'm going to take a different color for her top. The fabric, if it's kind of tighter, it would follow her chest and it would have a few folds over here maybe. And you would be able to see her chest a lot more clearly defined. And then if it was more baggy, I think that's what I was trying to do here. Again, the main issue here is the lack of clarity, is that the viewer can't really tell what you were intending with this. So I don't know if this was meant to be baggy or if it wasn't, because there isn't that clarity. So if I was drawing a more baggy shirt on her, I would do a straight line going down her chest where the gravity is pulling the fabric onto her chest, and then I would do another kind of straight line going at a different angle down. So the most important takeaway from this is that there are two separate planes, one on top of her chest and one is the fabric kind of falling off it, and it's not one continuous curve like I did here, but rather a few different straight elements. So don't do this, it just looks really confusing. That brings me on to my next point that's kind of more general, this applies to everything, not just anatomy, and that's you should be trying to use as many straight lines as possible because it's really easy, especially as a beginner, to hide behind curved lines. However, to an observer, that is very confusing and that doesn't really tell them what is happening. So I'll get rid of all of this and I'll show you where I've done this. So obviously over here, then there's this over here, which I would also kind of classify as a curved line. It's more of a wiggle, but it doesn't tell us what is going on or how the fabric is falling. It's just a very uncertain line. There's some over here, they're basically everywhere. And if I was drawing this again, I would just use straight lines to show this. So for example, the folds and her arm, I would probably not even do that many folds in this specific fabric. Maybe a few over here and one maybe going this way. But I think you can see that, oh sorry about that. But I think you can see that immediately by drawing straighter lines, it forces you to think about why you're drawing certain things and where you're putting certain lines. Very, very easy to draw kind of ambiguous curvy lines that don't really tell us what is going on. They often make the drawing look okay, but they don't make it look great. So in order to have that step up to making your art and your anatomy a lot better, you need to commit with straight lines and try and break everything down into straighter lines. And that takes me on to my next point, this curved line, which kind of ruined a lot of the anatomy of this drawing. In fact, it's just wrong because we don't have any muscle or any fat over here. So her having this hump is a little bit confusing and it really brings down the level of the drawing. If I were to draw this again, using straighter lines, I would connect the neck to the shoulder and we would see that, oh, this actually doesn't really go like this. There can be a little bit of something here, but it won't rise like that regardless of what you're really doing. There will be a straight element to your shoulders. So I think this is a really good example of how drawing curved lines not only confuses the viewer but also confuses you, because it makes it really difficult for you to see what you're doing. And this brings me on to my last point, is that you really need to use a reference. And you can clearly tell that I didn't use a reference for this drawing because this and this combined look really unnatural. Firstly, this sort of downwards Nazi salute isn't a pose that people really do. I think my initial intention was for her to be leaning on this arm. I'm not entirely sure, but then her body would be more this way and her weight would be pressing down on this arm. Whereas currently she's just kind of laying it there, except instead of laying it in a relaxed way, it's really strained. So things like that wouldn't happen if you used a reference. Only this arm is a big contrast with her thighs, because her legs are pressed together, meanwhile her arm is all the way out here, and it's giving really confusing body language, which just isn't natural. She's sat up very straight. On the scene we can kind of tell she's in a park and she's just sat down there. There's no reason for her to be sitting up straight or strained, unless there is a reason, but I don't think I really thought this through. But yeah, that's my main point, is that you should use a reference. It will fix immediately all of the contextual issues of posing and will ensure that you don't do what I did here and combine elements that you know how to draw in one kind of Frankenstein pose that no one ever does. Yeah, that's pretty much it from me. Let me know if you like this more educational format, and like, subscribe. Goodbye.